All right, we'll start over. Introduce
Okay.
yourself again.
I'm Florine Wheeler. I will be 90 years old on March the 26th. I was born in 1924 in Boynton, Oklahoma. I was number 10 in the family. There was a family of 11. My daddy died when I was 6 months old, and mother remarried when I was 4. And then she had another boy then. He is the only one that is still living, is my brother and myself out of the family. I went to school at Boynton. I met my husband in Boynton, and we married in 1941.
What was your husband's name?
Uh-huh.
What was your husband's name?
Buck Wheeler. His name was Edward, but everybody called him Buck, and so that was the only name that he was known by. Of course, he went into the service after we'd been married about 6 months. That was during World War II. So then Marie was born while he was in the service, and he was overseas, for several months in the Philippines. Okay. And then when he came home, well, we bought a place out. He bought a lot of cattle, so we sold milk and all that sort of things, there. And we moved to LaPorte in 1950, okay. And I've been here ever since.
What made y'all move from all the way from Oklahoma to LaPorte?
Well, we decided to sell out. He was going to go to work for the public, and he did. He went to work for the Floor Construction Company, and he would have been transferred. He would have been transferred to California, but the time that he was ready to be transferred, Marie and Jimmy were both in school here, and I didn't want to go. So he went with the union and stayed here.
Oh, okay. So tell me a little bit more about growing up in Oklahoma. So you were the 10th?
I was the 10th child.
So what did...
I had brothers and sisters that have children as old as I am because of the span of life there. My older sister's boy and I were about the same age. Her oldest son and I were about the same age. And the others were, and actually I played with nieces and nephews, as growing up there. I was raised, mother and we were on an oil lease. And my daddy pumped, we had a power plant, and he pumped this the oil. We had wells all over. Mother owned the land, but she did not own the mineral rights. But he worked for the company that owned the mineral rights. And that's how she met my stepfather, who I had a wonderful stepfather. He was really good. He treated me just like his own child, and as like a baby. And in fact, he's the only father I ever knew.
Yeah. What was his name?
And because, like I said, my daddy died when I was just 6 months old.
What was your stepfather's name?
Vernon Rue. Okay. And my half-brother that lives in Fort Worth, his name is Vernon Rue. Okay. He was named after his father. Yeah. And
like when you were born, how many kids were still at home? If you had 10, were there some that were already out of the house?
Yes, my older brothers and sisters was already gone. I know my oldest sister was married, and my oldest brother, he married undoubtedly when I was a baby, because I can't ever remember him not being married. And then, like I say, he's got a daughter that's only a couple of years younger than I am. So. The older ones were already gone. I really can remember that there was 3 of us girls within within 4 years. One of them was 3 years older than me, and one was 4 years older than I was. And they both lived here in LaPorte. You know, well, one sister lived here when I moved here. And then the other one moved because she said she wasn't going to stay away from my kids when they were little. And
so your older sister had lived here, and is that part of the reason that y'all came?
My sister that was just 4 years older than me.
Yeah.
No, my older sister had already died by that time. You know.
But the one that was 4 years, she was already in LaPorte.
No, yeah,
Before.
my oldest one. Yeah, she lived here.
Okay.
Her husband was transferred here from Inglewood, California. He worked for Shell Oil, and they transferred him to the Shell Oil here in LaPorte. I mean here, you know. Yeah. And so they were already here when we moved here, and that's one reason we moved to LaPorte. Yeah. Was because I did have somebody here, you know. When we moved, we decided to leave Oklahoma, and well, that's when. And Marie was had started to school in Oklahoma, but she was only in the 3rd grade, and Jimmy was only 3 years old.
Okay. Yeah.
So when we moved to LaPorte, so they have never known anything except you know LaPorte. Yeah. And both of them, of course, still live here. Yeah. And we moved here on Thanksgiving Day. We got here on Thanksgiving Day. And I remember, I thought, it's just going to be such a strange place. Of course, during the war, I had lived in just like a few months at a time at different places because of where he was stationed. Yeah. But then, really, I had just lived right close to my folks all the time, you know, and it was kind of hard that first to move away. But right after we moved here, I guess we moved here on a Thursday, and on a Sunday I decided, well, I'm going to find a church. And so I got out and got driving around, and I found First Baptist Church. And at that time they were meeting in what we now call is our Family Life Center. The big church was not built at the time. And I've been going there ever since. I've been in the same church all these years. 60, let's see, it'd be 50, about 66 years or so. I've been right there in the same place.
That's good. And tell me some more about, like, when you were a kid in Oklahoma. What kind of town was it? Was it a big town? Was it a small town? Did you go to the movie theaters?
The lease was 2.5 miles from town, out on the lease. But there was, like I say, we were on an oil lease, but there was farms all around, and so my mother was really concerned because the people that lived on those farms most of them didn't even have cars. Now we had a car, but most of them didn't. And we went to, we went to church in town. So she was so worried about that my daddy and some men in the community, Mother owned 40 acres of land there, and there was a lot of timber on it. So they built what was called a brush arbor. And in the summertime, the different preachers in town would come out to the brush arbor on Sunday afternoons and have service. So we would have to go to church on Sunday morning. We would have to go to church in town. Then on Sunday afternoon, we'd have to go to church in that brush arbor because the different preachers in town would come out there and hold services on Sunday afternoon. Well, that let all the people who didn't have cars, and there would be big crowds of people that would come there.
And they were still coming there by what, wagon?
But yeah, by wagons or walking, and and it was close enough that a lot of them could come to there. Yeah. They couldn't go into, it'd been too farther for them to go into town to church. So
when you were a kid, did going into town, did you get to, did you ever go see a movie?
Oh yeah, we had a movie.
Okay.
Just one movie theater there, and it just was on weekends. We would go in on Saturdays, Saturday nights usually. As a teenager growing up, it was Saturday night, and it seemed like that it was a small town, and it seemed like everybody went to town on Saturday nights. You got to see everyone. It was just one of those, places that you got to see everyone.
Yeah. Do you remember a movie in particular?
No, I can remember we went into Muskogee, and we went to see, that was the first colored movie I ever saw, was that Blue Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
And I can remember that being about probably the first colored movie I ever saw then.
What else did y'all do for fun, like as a teenager?
We had what they called, from place to place, we would go to, and we had what they call swinging parties, and we played swinging games, as growing up as a teenager. That's we did, had those.
What is that? What did that mean?
You played out in the yard, and they'd sort of similar to square dancing, only it was games, and everybody played them, and not just that. But then it was fun. You got to see everybody, and it was a lot of fun.
Did you have extended family? Like, did your mom have brothers and sisters that lived? Did you have cousins?
They did. They didn't live close.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I had uncles. I had a couple uncles that lived within driving distance that they would come to see us, and but like I said, now I had one uncle that had kids about my age, but now my mother's older brothers, they were all grown up kids by the time I came along, and so. But my uncle they all sang, and we had once a month we had singing conventions, and they would have those like in the schoolhouses and around, and everybody went to the singing conventions, and entertainment. Yeah. We didn't have television, back then. Yeah. So my grandfather came from Switzerland, and by the time I was in I guess about the 5th grade, my grandfather moved in with us, because at that time he was rather old and he was feeble. And so he bought the first radio that we had. It was a battery operated radio, and he bought the first radio that we had. And he talked very broken. And we kids would laugh, because his byword was "by golly," only he said "by Charlie," and we had to laugh, about the different.
Well, that was your first radio, so it just made me think. When you were real little, did y'all have electricity and
we had gas lights.
Yeah, okay.
We had so much on the oil lease. There was so much gas until we had torches out all in the yard. It was very lighted around, and they laugh at me and tell me now that that's why I have to have night lights all over my house, because I was so used to it growing up that but at that time, but then rural electricity came through there, and they went ahead and wired the house for electricity. But growing up, we had gas lights, which was a light with a mantle, the little mantles on them and all. Yeah. And then after that, Dad got generators. Oh. And we had generators, and...
what about plumbing?
Not until, it was quite... We had when they built the home, we had a big one of those bungalow homes. It was a pretty good size home, Of course, like I said, there's a bunch of us, and they built bathrooms, but we didn't have plumbing. And the way they did that, when they did the plumbing, it was a big water tank that that was built up on
Oh,
kind of like this they do here, you know, and then the water ran into the house.
oh, okay. Okay.
I know some of the people had where they had to pump the water in, into the house, but we didn't. It was fixed with this. Like I said, Daddy had generators, and he run everything with that.
Yeah.
And he was a real smart man. He had a blacksmith shop that everybody brought things to him to fix and all that,
What school did you go to? What was your
Boynton.
Boynton High School?
Mm-hmm.
And were you involved in any clubs or did you play sports?
In the Glee Club, and I sang in a trio, and then sang in the Glee Club, and I played basketball.
How did your basketball team do? Were y'all?
We didn't do so good. Now, but my older brother, they were state champions. So he was 6 years older than me, and of course I was down farther in school, when he was playing basketball. But the team he was with, they won state championship.
Cool.
So.
Do you remember what was your favorite subject in high school? Did you like?
Probably, I would probably say English and literature because I like to read, and I still do.
Yeah.
I read a lot. If you look in that living room in there, you see all those books. Everybody knows I like to read, and they bring me books all the time. But I like to read just all kinds.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly fond of just one certain author or anything like that. I just like to read.
Yeah. So, okay, so then you get married, and Aunt Marie's born, and then how much younger is Jimmy?
5.5 years.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so, was Jimmy born in Oklahoma too?
Yeah.
He was born there before you moved?
He was born in Oklahoma before we came to Texas. In fact, I think that I know his third Christmas was here because we were. I brought back lots of memories because Misty came down and spent Sunday afternoon going through pictures, and I told her, I said, take anything you want. So she got a lot of pictures, and going through those pictures, she's got a lot of pictures of her daddy when he was just a baby, and little, and then herself. We took pictures of her like there was nobody's business, and she had so many pictures with her grandpa, and of course he kept her, and so it brought a lot of memories back to her about her early childhood because she stayed here so much.
When y'all moved to LaPorte, where did y'all live?
Well, before we lived on 2nd Street, and then we moved from there to Brownell, and we lived in Brownell till we bought this house. And that's where the kids went, Marie and Jimmy were more or less, they were raised there.
Okay.
And
is that house still there?
Uh-huh.
It is?
Yeah, it's still there. Doesn't look like the same house because they built something on the back and all that, sort of thing. But it's still there.
Yeah.
And then after Jimmy started school, I went to work for Edson's Dry Goods, and when I went to work there, I was working for Walter Springall, but then he went to do some kind of electrical salesman or something, and I took over as manager there, and until the older Hogan boys owned it, and that when they sold out, I went to work for Montgomery Ward's. I worked there 21 years.
Where at?
In Pasadena. I went to work for Montgomery Ward's in Pasadena when it was just the it wasn't even finished on the inside. I went there checking in merchandise, and then I managed the dry goods department. And then when they decided not to sell dry goods anymore, I went to the cosmetic department. And that lady her husband retired and they left, and so I started managing the cosmetic, and I was there until I retired in 1987.
Wow.
So.
All right, so let's see, what else? Any memories about LaPorte, like different things about, how much like Main Street has changed since you...
There's nothing there now.
Okay, what was on Main Street whenever
when I was
first went
when we lived there, well, golly, there was a pure oil company there, and there was of course the banks and the hardwares and the grocery stores, the 2 drug stores, a hotel. But I haven't been back there in a long time, but Marie and Jimmy have. We went to Oklahoma, the 3 of us went to Oklahoma, and Marie and Jimmy drove out there just to see, because they remembered us going up, and when my mother and daddy retired and Buck's mother and daddy retired, they moved in the same block. They bought homes in the same block.
Yeah.
And so the kids knew Grandma and Grandpa just from, place to place. And so they went back out there and they said there's nothing there. The bank is closed, and there's not, they said there's some new homes there, but it was just people that worked in Muskogee, and drove back and forth. As far as that little, it just went to...
What about down here in LaPorte? I mean, LaPorte Main Street. What's different about that?
Oh, a whole lot of difference here.
Yeah.
When we came to LaPorte, they had about 7,000 people here. And there just wasn't hardly any. In fact, one of the school teachers roomed with my sister, because they didn't have all these apartment houses and things until he got married. Well, he lived with he rented a room, from her. And but golly, when Main Street was pretty good then. We had dress shops. We had 3 grocery stores. There was 3 grocery stores on Main Street. And there was Lax Hardware right next to Edson's. Edson's is on the corner of 3rd and Broadway, or Main Street there. And then Williams Liquor Store was there, and 2 car dealerships. Mm-hmm. The Chevrolet place was right in town there. Now I think that guy's got maybe some tire shops, and he sells cars too, I think, some second-hand cars, And there was the theater was going. Yeah. We had that was all on Main Street, and cafes. There was 2 cafes on Main Street.
Do you remember the names?
Well, one of them was Miss Harris had that cafe, and and then LB and Opal had a cafe, and I don't know what their last name. I can't remember what their last name was, but there was 2 there on Main Street, and there was Hubby's Hardware, and then there was Hardware right across the street from there. I don't know what's in there right now. I think it's probably antique something, that kind. That's about what they have up there now. Yeah. There's a lot of antique stores and sales, that type of thing there now. But it was pretty thriving business right when we moved here. Yeah. And there was also, my kids had a skating rink to go to. They had a bowling alley to go to. Yeah. The movies. And they had a Saturday morning movie, and I think that it cost 12 cents to go to the movie, and you could give them a quarter and they could have a drink and a popcorn and a movie, Yeah. That was the big deal for the kids. On Saturday morning they went to the movies, and when they were younger, smaller. And the thing of it is, at that time, we were living in a time when you could trust people.
Yeah.
And you didn't mind your kids playing out at night. You didn't mind all this, you know, like right now that could not be. It's a different world we're living in now. Completely different world that we're living in.
So, I just thought, tell me, do you know, your husband went off to the Philippines. Was he in the Navy or?
Army.
He was in the Army?
Uh-huh.
And was that the only, I mean, can you tell me anything about where he went and what he did?
Well, I know when he left, we were in California, and when he left, he went from California to New Guinea, and then they were there getting ready to make the invasion of Leyte Island in the Philippines, and he went in on the invasion of Leyte Island there. We tried to get him to talk to us a lot about it, but I think they saw so much until it was hard to talk to.
Was it towards the end of the war or at the beginning?
Huh?
Was it towards the end of the war or the beginning of the war?
Well, he was there in the South Pacific. You know, the war ended in August. I'm trying to think what year that would have been.
45.
45?
Yes,
And he had to go, he went from he was on a ship, you know, then they did everything by points, if you were married and all this kind of stuff. So he was on a ship thinking he was coming home. He didn't get to come home. He went to Hiroshima and did guard duty over there in Hiroshima. And then he came home in December of 45.
Okay.
So it was a real tough time, I think, over there. At one time, I had 2 brothers over in the European theater. I had one brother that made the invasion when they left France. I mean, went into France, you know, and he was on D-Day. He was injured 6 days after with shrapnel.
Wow.
And he lived with shrapnel in his back until he died. And he, bless his heart, he was the only family member, I think, that died except with a heart attack. Well, he was the only one that died in a car accident after he'd already retired from work then, you know, and when he was killed. But my 2 brothers that were over in that European theater, both of them were injured.
What were their names?
A.L. Epperson and Carl Epperson. And what was so funny, well, A.L. was not as badly hurt as Carl was. Carl was youngest. And when they were in the hospital in England, you know,